Welcome to Blueprints. I'm Bodine Sanders, your producer and host. Joining me today is Adrianna B. Rojas, PhD, leadership expert, TEDx speaker, founder of Idea Principles Consulting. Listen, I am really excited to have Adrianna here. Welcome to Blueprints, Adrianna. How are you?
I'm doing great, Bodine, and thank you so much for having me and inviting me to partake in this important conversation.
Well, as you know, my goal this year was to have more women guests. I've accomplished that, and I wanted to do it through diversity, and I've done that as well. So I've had all women of different backgrounds, different professional experiences, and I'm really excited to have you. So the first thing I always ask my guests is share your positive perspective on diversity, equity, and inclusion from where you work and your experience.
Thank you, Bodine. And I'll start off by saying this is beautiful work. This is the work of heart and mind and getting people together to collaborate. I love what I do. Sometimes it's not easy, but DEI is ultimately about developing leaders who can empathize with their stakeholders, bring people to the table. It's a shift from what we may imagine leadership to be, that command authority, to team leader, inclusive leadership, thinking intentionally about who's included, who's not, why. And it's making a plan about how to bring experts, best minds, to the table. And true leadership is recognizing and nurturing the greatness of those that you lead, developing future leaders, and bringing out the best so that we can all work together to accomplish the organization's goals, live up to the mission, and enact the values. And so, I really focus in the work that I do on a relational approach to DEI, creating that workplace culture where people feel invested in one another's success and empowered to voice their concerns and share their ideas, building alliances, forging connections. We all have to be able to see one another, listen to one another, speak with kindness and respect to solve some of the challenges that we're, facing in our organizations and shape that collective vision. And so by contrast, the transactional approach to DEI, checklists, mandates, or top-down approaches lacks depth. And it fails to achieve sustainable change when it's only coming from one part of the organization. And so it's not just about meeting numbers or implementing policies. It's creating that workplace environment where everyone can thrive, where people feel heard, where people feel valued, listened to, respected. And I would even go a step further, where people's dignity is honored. And our dignity is our inherent value and worth. Our dignity can be honored or can be violated. And as a leader, you have the responsibility to see the greatness in your team, to take feedback, and to correct course and be accountable to the ever-changing needs of a growing multicultural workforce.
And listen, I know for a fact, because I use sports as an example, some of the lingo, the terms, the words that you're using describing that business side of the ledger, it's been developed, because that's the operative word, that's the equal word, development. The sports industry has done that. It's not perfect, it's not 100%, but they've developed that because in order to win, in order to have a winning organization, you have to meet all those measurements and accomplishments within the organization, or you're not going to win. And that's what corporate America and other industries, even the educational industry, is missing out on. And I think they're missing out on it because they refuse to believe that the sports industry has a handle on it. They rather think that their industry should be the one that accomplished this wonderful diversity painting. But guess what? In sports, it doesn't matter who scores the touchdown. What matters is that the team wins and everybody does their job, right? So I agree with what your opening statement is and was, because it's true. But it's all about development. It really is about development and the culture and all those things. It's a gumbo soup of all the things that you just talked about, what corporate America needs to open eyes. And listen, I'm not naive. I understand that different folks are having this conversation about DEI in different ways. I get it. But if you focus on those negative conversations instead of focusing on positive results, positive processes, and people and organizations and industries that have a positive result, you're missing out. But anyway, it's about you. It's not about me. Share with my audience your origin story. How did you get into this space and so forth? Share with the folks.
I grew up in northern New Jersey, and I've always been an introvert, very quiet, reflective person. Like, that's not fair. That's unjust. And we were the only family of color on our block. We were the only immigrant family. We were the only family that openly spoke Spanish. And my parents always instilled pride in my Ecuadorian, Colombian heritage, learning Spanish, learning our cultural traditions, the history and such. So I've always felt like I didn't belong. And for me, belonging has been something that is an interesting concept, right? Because it takes two, right? An organization has to create the conditions for people to be included. Things have to be fair at the organization. And all these psychological things, systemic things contribute to that overall sense of belonging within an individual. So flashing forward to graduate school at the University of Virginia, I was still struggling with this concept of belonging. And I was my first year in the PhD program. I got in by the skin of my teeth. And I'm like, what do I do now? How do I make it? I'm at this point where I'm like, I'm ready to throw in the towel. But I know it's important that I finish what I started and my dream of having this degree and becoming a professor. So I found a mentoring institute, and it was the first time I had seen a program that was specifically to advance historically marginalized groups on campus. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to apply and see if this is going to be a good fit for me. And I'll have to say that the University of Virginia's mentoring program for graduate students was the first time I said, I belong here. With all my imperfections, with all my lack of experience in education and graduate education at that point, to be alongside students of color, students of different religious backgrounds, and say, wow, I can just be myself, not know who, the theorist of the week is, and be like, who's that? Why didn't I learn about them in high school or college? And that contributed to my growth and development and support network. So this work has been something that I've been hungry for and craving. And I truly envision a world where we walk around with people of different backgrounds, perspectives, and people, regardless of, what identity they hold, they can navigate and participate comfortably. Hearing support, hearing growth and development, engaging one another with curiosity and humility, all those things contribute to our sense of belonging and ability to grow and develop and contribute to the overarching goal. So for me, my family story, my college experiences were like, wow, this is what we can do if we truly see one another, engage with diverse perspectives, connect across lines of difference. We can truly do beautiful things.
Do you identify as Latina or Latino, or how's that go? Because I want to make sure I'm educating myself.
Yes, absolutely. So it's interesting because Latino is a construction in the U.S. right? It comes from the previous construction Hispanic. And so we are Latinos only in the US. And the majority of Latinos identify by their country of origin before they identify as Hispanic, Latino, Latina, Latinx, Latine, Latinus, and all these interesting variations that have come out due to conversations around gender pronouns and inclusivity. So most people will identify, so I identify as Colombian, Ecuadorian, American, but I am aware of the way different forms of Latin are being used, and use that to be in solidarity with other groups who share similar immigration histories, and have been racialized in the United States. So I do think that is important to name. Yeah. And with regard to being intentional, right, about reaching out to see who's missing and inviting them into these conversations and then widening your network, right? There's great opportunity there, and intentional leadership, because being the only Latina in some spaces has shown me how important it is to be seen. Representation matters, not only for ourselves, but to kind of share with other people our stories. Hey, we're here. We experience the world differently. This is my story. But also connect to people who are like, wow, I've had that experience too. Wow, it's nice to see somebody talking about issues that impact us. And so Latina visibility in higher education, professional spaces can really inspire others, and be part of this vision for inclusivity and success. And so I hope that answers your
Oh, it does.
question.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your work, your day-to-day work, and how are you inspired to be in that space, and how did it start, and how's it going?
Absolutely. So when I was at the University of Virginia, I was working on my PhD in trauma and resilience and analyzing the Peruvian internal conflict of the 80s and 90s. And so I learned a lot about what it means to have collective trauma as a nation, what it means to build collective resilience, because trauma is not the norm. We are resilient. We have a lot of joyful experiences. We come together to memorialize and move forward with whatever life gives us. And through that research, I got a tenure track job at the Eastern Mennonite University. It is a Mennonite university that focuses on the values of social justice. So I became very much involved with theory and practice at the Center for Justice and Peace around restorative justice, about empowering people from marginalized communities, and different aspects of social justice and teachings and trauma awareness and strategies for resilience that informed the way I was practicing. So my job was to create a more inclusive curriculum for students that incorporated the voices of LGBTQ authors, people from different racial and ethnic groups throughout Latin America, and present different documentaries and conversations about how we can live up to our values of social justice, and we could practice it in our spheres of influence, right? Starting with self, then influencing peers, family, organizing in the community, bringing these skills to the workplace, right? How do we work through conflict? How do we navigate it more effectively? How do we transform relationships and grow relationships? So all this information was coming in through me, and I was trying to apply it to the classroom. So in 2019, I left academe, and I decided to start working with nonprofits and government agencies and listen to the workforce. What are their needs? What are their barriers? What is preventing them from connecting with each other or the stakeholders that they're trying to reach? And using that focus group qualitative data to really customize learning solutions, right? And so, whether it be training about how to address microaggressions, how to practice cultural humility, how to raise issues to your manager in a way that's proactive, solution oriented, and honors each other's dignity. So all those things kind of came into play as like, wow, there's a big need here for people to develop cultural competence, intercultural communication skills, and humanistic skills necessary to create this ideal vision of inclusion.
Well, listen, listening to you talk about that process, the example of the Washington Commanders came into mind, right? And that's kind of close to home. You went to UVA, right? And so they changed ownership, and you can instantly see the difference between the past owner and the current ownership group. The current ownership group is different than the past owner. What he said, the buck stopped with him, whereas now there's an ownership group. It is a diverse group, right? And now that diverse group is winning. The team is winning. It starts at the top, right? And if the leadership at the top is moving in the right direction, want the organization from top to bottom to be on the same page, that's a positive thing. So talk about leaderships and leadership organizations that you work with, because we know it starts with leadership in order to get everyone else on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. So leaders are interesting. They usually get to their positions because they've been really good at meeting target numbers. They're well liked. Maybe they're the charismatic leader or the leader that gets things done. They're not necessarily moving up in the ranks because of their people management skills. Okay. And so once somebody finds themselves in the position of manager or supervisor, that's a whole different field, right? You may be an expert in what you do, whether it be teaching, accounting, IT, but when it comes to people, and I love people, but we're complicated, we're fussy,
Yep.
and, don't always follow through with what we say we're going to do for lots of different reasons.
Right.
And so leaders must have empathy, must recognize the power that they hold within an organization and use that power to empower others and see greatnesses in others and develop those skills. So leaders are really interesting because there's a drive and a desire generally to do better, to get feedback from stakeholders. And whenever I start engagements with clients, there's usually some sort of assessment. What does the training group, what do members of the organization think, feel, need, and where do they see opportunities for growth and development? And whenever I hand that report to leaders, they get stressed because they know this is coming, right? They know they're going to go see, what's going on at the organization. And then there's like a process of trying to accept the survey data, the things that need to change and improve. And so I'm there to help coach leaders on these are opportunities. We're going to move from a fixed mindset where everything is fine, quotation marks, to, okay, these are opportunities to expand our outreach, to improve our people processes and such. And there's a lot of sometimes denial, pushback, oh, that can't be, or, I've done this, aren't these people grateful, right? There's a lot of rhetoric there. But ultimately, once those walls come down and that information is processed, leaders are like, wow, we have a great opportunity here to have greater impact in this marketplace, to do good in this community. There's some training needs here that we hadn't even thought of that our workforce needs, so that we can get on that and make a strategic plan. So by engaging stakeholders, you definitely have that opportunity to get insights necessary to move that business forward, because who's going to know your organization best from the front line than your workforce, right? They're going to be the ones interacting with customers, the one using systems and processes, having conflict management issues with members of their team team and such. And so this is a rich opportunity, and cultivating a feedback-rich environment is part of the things that I help organizations do so that people feel more comfortable giving feedback or feed forward, right? Feedback that allows you to grow and develop as an individual, as a team, as an organization.
I totally agree. In my previous life, I worked for a major national media company. One part of my title was community affairs, which means I dealt with a lot of nonprofits. I've been on boards. I've been a member of nonprofits, and I totally agree with you. Sometimes they can't handle the truth. They can't handle the truth, right? Their mission statement, their vision statements may say one thing, but in reality, it's not what it appears to be. So, I've been involved, currently involved with a nonprofit that just went through the survey process, and they're 100% on board, ready to make things happen, not afraid of the findings, because they want to do better for everyone involved, not just the staff, the board members. They want to do well for the members that walk through their organization, the community, everyone. So, what you're saying makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. Mm-hmm. Explain to the audience the acronym IDEA, and how you came about it.
Yeah, so there's many of these floating around, and I particularly like IDEA: inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. And the philosophical orientation of IDEA is that we begin with inclusion. We have to create spaces, whether they be the workplace, community spaces, that are inclusive, of people of different abilities, of people of different socioeconomics, racial, ethnic, gender identities. Inclusion is behaviors, right? It's the way we interact with others, okay? And then diversity is the next piece, right? So we want to have that workplace culture stable, right? We're intentionally inclusive. We include everybody on an email, if it's related to their growth and development. And if we don't, right, we apologize, right? So, you know what? I left you out. Here's the invitation. Here's the recap. It's gestures like that that make people feel included. Diversity is everything that makes us, whether it be race, neurodiversity, ethnicity, gender, region you grew up in the United States. It's so much more than just that. And being knowledgeable, right? This is where cultural competence comes in. Being knowledgeable about those identities, those experiences, and using that knowledge, right, to further build inclusive practices and such. Equity is that I like to make these verbs because I believe that leaders need to be action oriented, and these are not just statements, right? And so equity is checking to make sure our policies, our processes, and practices are fair, and they're leading to equal outcomes, regardless of the identity a person may hold. So it's really just this check to ensure that people have access to opportunities, people are able to connect with leaders, have access to networks, are being compensated fairly, have, and all these other things that go under the equity umbrella. And then accessibility is about universal design. And it's important to fostering inclusive environments because it goes beyond physical access like ramps or elevators or sending meeting agendas the day before so everyone has an opportunity to review them, which is inclusive of neurodiverse individuals or people with disabilities. But it's making sure that everyone has access to opportunities, resources, and environments. And I would add to this, making sure that people with low literacy skills are included, and that there are opportunities for interpretation or translation of materials in culturally appropriate languages. So accessibility focuses a lot on technology, alternative formats, ensuring online platforms are compatible with screen readers, various communication styles, accommodations, and so much more. But it's like this kind of final check on inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility that makes information and inclusion truly comprehensive and embedded in the systems of the organization. And so one of the things I love about IDEA is it also represents bringing perspectives together. We generate more ideas, we share ideas, we collaborate to work on, the mission, the goals, the strategic plan. And so I think IDEA is a very powerful acronym.
Well, thank you very much. Listen, we're getting about 3 minutes to the end of the program, but I have 2 more questions for you. Sure. One, share that experience, that TEDx speaking experience with the audience. What was that like? Because that is on my to-do list. I'm not there yet, but it's definitely on my list.
It was truly a labor of love. And it took me, I want to say, from maybe a little over 6 months to really hone down what I wanted to say, the story that I wanted to tell. And I worked with a good friend of mine, Stevie J, who I mentioned in the TEDx, who's a writer, performance artist, and speaking coach, to fine-tune the script, the message, and even the delivery of it. And it's intense. It is wonderful. It was a lot of fun. And one of the things that I wasn't ready for was to really practice the talk. And so I remember having this beautiful script, and it's a week before the TEDx. And I'm like, I don't have this committed to memory. How do I memorize this? And so my coach was like, you just need to read it. Keep reading it, keep repeating it. And eventually it will come through. And I was like, okay. And I'm like 3 days before, and I'm like, I don't have this completely memorized. How is it going to go? And once, I got up there, I saw, I had seen other talks during the day. I had, friendly faces in the audience. I got up there and I was having a conversation with a good friend and sharing with them my story about having courageous conversations with my father.
Yep, that's all it is. That's absolutely all it is. And one more thing, are you writing a book, or have you written a book?
I'm writing a book, yes. It's IDEA Starts at Home. And it is a nod to a phrase that we have in Spanish called education begins at home. And education being the way that we are taught to be kind, to be respectful, to be curious, and essentially how our work starts here within us, within our home here, and then the physical home around us, and how we build walls, we shut doors, but we really have the opportunity to grow and expand. So it's about the experiences I've had as a Latina in the United States, but also about different client interactions and conversations I've had that have led to that personal and professional growth and development in inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility.
Well, listen, why don't you share with the audience real quick any information, contact information, if anyone wants to reach out to you, and then I'll wrap the program up.
Wonderful. My name is Adrianna Rojas. I'm owner and principal consultant of Social Justice Works. You can find me on LinkedIn. Love to connect with you there. You can reach me at Rojas, rojas.sjw @gmail.com. And you can check out sjworks.co if you want to see a little bit more about the assessment and strategy and training work that I offer.
Well, listen, I want to thank Adrianna Rojas, PhD, for being a guest on our Blueprints program. We've come to the end of the program. Thank you for your time. Stay tuned. There's more to come on this MLTV network.